Hey guys, this is Eric Weingart with Weingart Racing. Before this video begins, I thought I better do a disclaimer because I need to do it, otherwise I want to hear it in the comments. But please don't compare this motor you're about to see, which is a boosted LS 408 cubic inch engine, to the last boosted engine that I had on my channel, which was the small block Chevy. They made 1,056 horsepower with the stock block, stock crank, stock rods. Please don't compare it to this LS 408. I know you're going to be tempted to. It's just not a very fair comparison. But let's get to it right now.
We go, John.
Here you have the engine builder. That's Hunter on the left and his dad Ron on the right. Hunter built this whole engine. Now, he was 15 at the time when he built it. He's currently 16. He's won a whole bunch of Rocky Mountain race weeks, and he did a lot of stuff, but he's the one responsible for this. He did it for this magazine, this All Chevy Performance magazine. They got a two-part series, I guess, that's coming out or is out, and it goes over this whole build and everything. They did some fantastic pictures, way better than I did. And through the help of Summit with some of the parts as well, this thing is a true masterpiece. Here's the breakdown on the engine. This engine started life as a LS3. Now, this is a cast iron block. It's bored 30 over. It's got ARP main studs. The rotating assemblies of the Summit Pro LS rotating assembly, which has forged pistons, rods, and crank. Now, the pistons are actually flat top. In the picture, it looks different, but that's just what they have. We use a flat top piston, which yields about 11-to-1 compression ratio. For the cam, it's a Summit Racing cam. It's actually one of their turbo cams. You might say, why are you using a turbo cam on a supercharged? Well, we'll get to that later in the video. But the specs are 234 duration on intake, 238 on exhaust, 625 lift on intake, 600 on exhaust, 115 degrees of lobe separation. The heads are these trick pieces. These are from Trick Flow. These are their 225cc as cast heads. Now, they do have CNC chambers, but they're an as cast head. They're not ported. And cathedral design as well. Nothing else was done to them, so completely as you'd get them from Summit. The intake, it's a Holley high ram. Very common for you LS guys. You're very well aware of this. It does use a 92mm throttle body. The fuel injection was controlled by a Holley Dominator. So you have this system, and it's really nice. Most of you are pretty familiar with this one as well. The injectors are where things get a little weird. So to start off, at first they tried these fuel injectors. Now, these are 220-pound Holleys. Very common. Everybody seems to use them, but for whatever reason, one of them happened to be sticking, so it wasn't idling right, and of course it wasn't running right, and it just wasn't right. So what ended up happening is they took the injectors and they went to go have them cleaned and tried it again, and those just didn't seem to work. So they ordered another set of Holleys from Summit. Now, this isn't Summit's fault. I think this happens a lot with parts companies. It looked like somebody had used the 220s in their engine and had a problem, sent them back, and Holley just reboxed them and sold them. There's no way they were going to try another set of injectors that looked questionable. Luckily, Jonathan Lorg, which is their tuner, had a set of Deca 220s. Now, I searched the internet forever just to be able to see if I could even buy them and find them or anything. No. This is the closest I found, and they're out of stock. And that's for the price for one injector. Now, he had 8. So the entire dyno testing you see was done with the Deca injectors. So they must be really, really special because it seemed like impossible to find. Although they performed well. It just seemed kind of expensive when you think about it. Because Jonathan only had one set of injectors, these are the injectors that's going to end up being used by Ron on this engine whenever they go racing. These are from Motion Raceworks. Seem to be far more available and probably better quality. Now let's get to testing. So this engine was initially broke in with a carburetor and a Victor Jr. intake manifold. This is an 830 CSU carburetor. This is where things get interesting. I'm about to show you the dyno graph, but it made 580 horsepower NA, right? Well, we also tried to NA with this Holley high ram. I actually thought the Holley high ram would make more. Unfortunately, it did not. If you look at this graph right here, you'll see that the 580 horsepower came from the carburetor. The Holley ram are all those lines underneath that. Now, some of that's with that TIC Performance intercooler that's in between those. And we tried it with and without. The TIC intercooler, it changed the horsepower about 4 horsepower and lost about 10 foot-pounds of torque. So not a huge change, but I really thought the Holley High Ram with fuel injection would beat what the carburetor did. Because remember, the carburetor is on the gas, and when it went to fuel injection, because all this stuff was on E85, and it didn't even make more torque. It was weird. You may be asking yourself, how did you run fuel injection on the dyno anyway? Well, we got this Ron did. He got this Ron Rhodes fuel tank with the built-in pump. So it's got 2 Warburg 450 pumps on the inside, and that's what fed this whole thing. So he brought the the whole fuel system itself, and then he also brought the Dominator, and he had batteries to run each one. And now that the NA stuff's done, it's time for the power adder. The power adder is this Pro Charger. This is an F1A94. So this one makes tons of power if you're familiar with this at all. And again, this is the Tick intercooler because although it's on E85, they thought it'd be a good idea to run this. It has water to air. So there's water that circulates through it almost like a radiator. They use this Craig Davis water pump that pushed water through it. And we had an ice bucket sitting off to the side that kept feeding it. And that's why you got those weird clear lines you see coming off. They're going to an ice bucket. It held intake temperatures about 50 degrees. Here you have Jonathan Lorg. He's a tuner on this beast. He's like, hey, let's kick this pig. Let's make some power. So that's what we do. Here are the final results. Now, this is after fuel and timing changes. So the final timing, I think, ended up at 24 degrees. And it was just some fuel changes to get it back to where it needed to be. It was like 11.35 on the gas scale, but of course running E85. So it ended up making some pretty good power, as you can see there. There's a lot left in it. That's got the big pulley on the blower, so that you could still add more boost, obviously. The boost itself ended up about 17 pounds. Now, it could have made more boost if they'd spun it up higher as well. So, yeah, never made a pulley change, just fuel and timing, and it seemed to respond well to that. We're done testing. Here's Hunter, and Gary's like, hey, kid, you just built an engine made over 1,000 horsepower. You should be happy. And, of course, they could tell he's ecstatic. Just as a reminder to the disclaimer at the beginning of the video, no, you cannot compare this to the 350 small block Chevy that I did last time that had the stock block, stock crank, stock rods with a Torque Storm 84 millimeter supercharger and an ATM blow-through carburetor. It's just really not a fair comparison to compare this to this LS. It's just not even in the same league. So please just avoid that temptation. I know it's there, and you're thinking we should really compare the small block Chevy to the LS. It's just not fair. It just isn't. Guys, remember, I don't port cast iron heads. I am no Superman. You guys take care.